Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. This is Tony with an I and Mark Avery, and we are live with It's Commonly Reported. So, listen, tonight is the night. We are going to be discussing some things that's going to have a couple of y'all underwear in a bunch. But we got to talk about it because the church is suffering because we're not having these conversations. So, in conjunction with, drum roll please, Pride Month, we're going to talk about it. So, Mark, you give us an introduction of what tonight is going to be all about.
Well, we need to understand that June is not just the month of dads and grads, but it's also a month that's set aside to honor, and this is not something that the kingdom put into more focus, but Pride Month for the entire month of June. And this today is the last day of June and the last day of any particular celebrations regarding Pride Month. So we thought that we would take the time to discuss this because all too often matters that don't get attention in the church are swept under the rug and carpet, and people attribute a lot of things for whatever lack of ignorance or lack of understanding. So we said we were going to be talking about riveting discussions and matters. So, hey, it's June. Let's talk about Pride Month and how it affects the kingdom, how it affects the church, and if it does impact, because whether we want to accept it or not, there's been a movement for years to make, I guess for lack of better terminology, for equal rights for the LGBTQ plus I community, and we have to realize that in many of our church circles, uh, we have those of that community that attend and maybe participate in our church circle. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know what? When I thought about this, I immediately thought about people like, remember Sylvester? The
Yes,
and if anybody knows anything about Sylvester, Sylvester came from out of the church,
he
and
actually came out
Sylvester
of church
has
in
an
Christ.
absolutely. And one of the things I had read about when I looked at his documentary, it was that none of the churches wanted to bury him. He ended up having his funeral at Walter Hawkins Church, and when I think about those situations, I often think about how the trajectory of a person's life would have been if the church would have just had a conversation and not immediately excommunicate. Because in a lot of situations, they automatically excommunicate. And the church has a way of saying without saying.
Right.
So I thought about Sylvester. I thought about the other young man who's a Broadway star, and he talks about his pain and trauma from when he was younger in the church, and he's well known now. And I can't think of his name, but
Billy
um,
Porter. Billy
Billy
Porter.
Porter. Yes, Billy Porter. I was listening to him talk, and I was so saddened by the things he was saying and how he was treated. And I'm like, man, I just wonder if things could have been different if we just had a conversation, if someone would have said to him, listen, we believe this is sin, we're not endorsing it, but we gonna love on you. Like, I wonder if those conversations were even had. What do you think?
It's interesting you brought up Sylvester. I remember watching that unsung. I think it was an unsung
Yes,
documentary,
yes.
and it Sylvester mentioned that um, he was I think it mentions in the documentary that he was violated in the church,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and he didn't have no problem mentioning the denomination.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty popular one, by the way. I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to put it out there, but you're absolutely right. When he died, he was looking for a place to. Well, before he died, if you look at the documentary more closely, he was trying to find a church home that he would feel comfortable in worshiping because he recognized he was trying to make his peace calling an election short, so to speak,
Right,
trying
right.
to get his business in order. And he also his mother was saying that she was happy that he found a church that was not, so to speak, accommodating, but uh, was a safe place for him in terms of feeling like what people look for. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care what people, whatever station of life they're in, whether they are alcoholic, whether they're a drug addict, a gambler, they look for a place of community
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
safe place of community. And
absolutely.
and that was the focus of the early church. The early church was a church that, if they talked about community and community from the perspective, they went from house to house breaking bread. That's community.
That's community.
So, you know, so his mother was happy that Love Center was a safe, quote unquote, haven for him. And when he died, they were able to have the service at Love Center. Now, that's another story in and of itself, because
Yeah.
Love Center, founded by the late Bishop Walter Hawkins, uh, was a ministry that endeared itself to that community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're not talking about that tonight, but the,
Mm-hmm.
the point that I'm making is that uh, many times people in the LGBTQ plus community will not come to our churches because we crucify them before they get into the pew. The church culture is not as loving as we say Jesus is. Now, God is a God of love. He's unconditional love, and whether we are whatever our label may be by sin, God loves. He loves us all.
Yes.
He's not willing that any should perish, but that all
Parishes.
should come to the knowledge of repentance.
Right.
Now, you mentioned, it's interesting, you mentioned a funeral. I remember in my pastorate, I'm going to say, within the last 20 years or so, uh, there was a young lady who was attending our church, and, I'm going to speak in generalities.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she was attending our church, and Lord was really blessing her. She was feeling comfortable. She
Mm-hmm.
was getting into the worship. Even on occasion, she came to a couple of Bible studies. And all of a sudden, I looked up and I didn't see her, and I got kind of concerned. I get a call, not knowing who she was, also,
Mm-hmm.
not realizing that she had relatives that were members of our church, who reached out to me to let me know that that was their sister who had passed.
Mm.
Oh, wow! So what I did was I reached out. They said, you need to reach out to this person, who is a point person for the arrangements. Well, to make a long story short, because we're being very real and transparent tonight, uh, I reached out to the individual and found out this was the young lady's domestic partner.
Mm.
And the question was, can we have her funeral at your church?
The old church, good. Listen, let's just park right there. We both know if that would have been any of the churches that we fellowshiped with, grew up in, they would have been too afraid to even approach. So it speaks volumes that they even felt safe enough, right, to even ask you. Wow, continue with this.
Okay. So when I found out it was the young lady's domestic partner, that didn't ruffle my feathers, so to speak. My whole perspective was, okay, we are a ministry and we're here to serve the community, whether the community comes from LGBTQ, drug environment, prison, whatever. We're here to serve the community at large. So I said, by all means, you can have the service here. But let me pump the brakes for a second. After giving the green light to the domestic partner, I said what I need to do. I need to get with the membership, and so I had a meeting before we had the service, and I made it clear that the young lady had passed, and everybody was kind of kind of shook it up about it. And I said, now I didn't go into detail. I said, but her partner. When I said partner, people kind of like, whoa, And I said her partner wants to have the service here, and I said there are probably going to be several couples that are not the traditional nuclear family couples that we're accustomed to. And I said this. I said, now, if you want to serve during the funeral and you feel uncomfortable being around this crowd, I'm going to ask that you stay home and pray for those of us that will. I made that abundantly clear, because the one thing I did not want to, because my job was to give the eulogy and to officiate the service, which I did, but I did not want to create a space where they may have felt threatened, because as you know, you're a counselor. When people are grieving, they're very vulnerable. And they can either go to tears or go to anger real quick. They can shift either way. So my assignment was to preach the gospel and extend comfort to the family. When I say the family, I said that one of the members of the church at the time, who happened to be one of the leaders of our church, that was his sister. All right. I did the service, but I made it clear to the membership: if you have issues with this crowd, I'm going to ask that you stay home and not come out. But those of you that will be able to just serve with the love of God and look beyond, what you see with your visible eye, I want you to come, because I'm going to need some help. Long story short, did the service. Everything went phenomenally well. There were about, in attendance, there probably were about maybe 20 to 30 couples.
Wow.
I ain't never had that many, that many of a crowd like that in one setting at the church. This was for a funeral during the week, early mid part of the week. All right, but I've got to be very honest. Let me be very honest with our audience. I did the service. We're on our way to the committal. In my mind's eye, this is what I'm thinking to myself. After I'm doing the committal, I knew they were going back to the church for the repast, because they wanted to use the church for the service and the repast. All right. I said to myself, I'm not going back to the repast. I'm doing the committal, and I'm bouncing. I'm going home. The Lord whipped me up in my car. He said, how dare you? You ministered love, you ministered grace to them while they were in the service. So now extend that ministry with sitting down with them with the meal. I'm like,
wow. Wow.
So I obeyed. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, first I'm like, I'm not doing this. No. But the Lord spoke to me and said, no, how dare you? So went to the church, sat down with them. I'm eating, and about a crowd, about maybe 4 or 5 couples come around my table, and I'm looking like, what is going on? The street sense start kicking in, like, what's going on here? I mean, I'm looking, and they came to me and said, Reverend Avery, thank you so much for showing so much love, so much compassion, and we really appreciate how your church really served us today.
Mm-hmm.
Man, when I got home, I cried like a baby because I had to repent. I said, Lord, we say sin in the souls, we pray
Mm-hmm.
sin in the souls,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we don't know. We here's the thing, we're like we're like that consumer that just wants to shop in a certain store when it comes to
Absolutely.
clothes.
Absolutely.
Send in this one, but Lord, don't
Uh,
send in these
yes,
folks.
send these type of saints, the ones, send these type of sinners, the ones that we can feel comfortable with. And one of the things that I realized, and I always say this about the church loves to compartmentalize sin. We like to categorize sin. And, I often think about, these family members that I know that will have a daughter or a member or a sibling that might be in a same sex relationship. And when like the holidays come, Christmas, things like that, they won't invite them. They're like, oh no, I'm not having y'all. God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, right? And so when I think about that, this is what I think about. So you okay with your daughter that got 6 kids and 5 baby daddies, right? Obviously, she a garden tool, and I'll leave it at that, right? Your
Well,
son,
you didn't say she's promiscuous.
no, she's a garden tool, okay? And then you have your son, they got 5 baby mamas, right? Christmas time, they right there. And maybe with one of the baby mamas. Easter, Mother's Day. You don't have a problem with your child having all these kids out of wedlock, not committing to nobody, nonetheless taking care of them. But you have a problem with your relative whose partner is the same sex. And this is why when it comes to the LGBTQ I plus community, they by far is a community that is the most loving. Like they will adopt a child knowing that this child was a crack baby. And they will still, I'm sorry, my dog is begging to get up here, so Daisy's a part of the podcast today. They are begged, like they will take your child. They have a level of forgiveness and inclusion that honestly the church should have that level of love. Now this is a disclaimer. We're not condoning anything, but what we are condoning is love. Love.
Exactly,
Like,
and we should be visible promoters of love. Let me stop there for a second because you reminded me of something that we talked about in our prep. I believe early on, I was conditioned, not realizing it. I was conditioned to show love in this particular manner. I'm gonna speak to what you just said about holidays, and I'm gonna have to be very transparent. I had a cousin who, for years, lived an open lesbian lifestyle. For years, and my dad and my mom, my dad was one of the head deacons at the church. My mom was the secretary. And this is being raised in an apostolic family in the 60s and 70s. So you know how tight it was back then, right? I will from this day on. I will because I found out stuff later on because my parents didn't tell us everything because they were wise enough to know that we didn't need to know everything.
right.
But I saw love personified by my mom and my dad to my cousin. Let me make it clear like this. She would come to our house, and she was a stud back in the 70s. All right.
70s.
All right. And sometimes she would bring someone with her. So we
Wow.
had two lesbians sitting up in our home, eating and sharing meals with us and our family. And my parents never, ever judged her, never mistreated her or whoever she brought along with her. Matter of fact, there were several occasions, and the audience needs to hear me. There were several occasions when my parents they had an outing or something. They would leave my cousin, they would leave my sister, my late sister and I in the care of our cousin who was a lesbian.
Wow.
She never did anything inappropriately. Never, never. I mean, never, 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 nothing. But fast forward. When she died, before she died, she totally committed her life to God.
Mm.
When she died, she did not die as a lesbian.
Mm.
She died as the woman God created her to be.
Amazing.
Why do I say that?
Mm-hmm.
I say that because I believe in my heart of hearts.
Yeah.
If my parents were here, they would probably give the testimony, but they don't need to because I was the eyewitness to this.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in my heart of hearts the love that my parents loved on her, the way they endeared themselves toward her, the way they treated her, and I'm sure, because I've been around church all my life, I'm sure they caught some flack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But my parents, especially my dad, you didn't know my dad, but my dad was a combination of Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Red Fox without cussing. But he just did not care. And my mom was sweet. You know my mom. My mom was just fine. But she was like, I love the Lord and it ain't their business. All right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe the way my parents loved on her was a contributing factor to her deliverance,
Mm-hmm.
to her ultimate turnaround.
Mm-hmm. And I remember Bishop Blue makes a statement where he says we have to love them until the Holy Ghost takes over. And I have friends who are in that lifestyle, and I continue. And this is the real part. They know my stance. Like they literally know exactly how I feel. Even when I taught college, my students knew my position. They knew that I was a preacher. They knew what my position was. But they loved me because I loved on them. I had a young lady that came to my church. One of my students had invited her. And she was a lesbian. And she sat right on like the second row on the end, like right there. And she said, after service was over, she was like, this is the first church I ever went to that when I walked in the door, the preacher did not shift his message from Noah and the ark to Sodom and Gomorrah. I was like, what? She was like, that's why I don't go to church. She said, because as soon as I get there, the preacher just shifts the whole sermon. And now they're talking about burning in hell, homosexuality, Lot in the end. And I'm like, first of all, I'm very sorry that you had that experience. Preachers preach the word, but you shouldn't been made to feel that way in that space because you walked in. It's one thing if the preacher was already talking about that and you happened to walk in there, I would say, God wanted you to hear that. But it's a thing where after they got there and the pastor notices them there, and now the sermon just shifts. And
look at this. I want you to see something. Hey, Lucinda, I currently have openly same-sex relationships in my family, and we treat them with the same love and kindness as everyone else.
Yep, they sure do.
It's just another one of the sisters from my church. I ask them too, and do the same as you. Absolutely, and that's the bottom line. Let me back up for a moment. Because this is this takes on a very very dear personal matter for me. Remember when at the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic
Mm-hmm.
Dropping like flies, and
Yes.
people were very ignorant and very
Right.
fearful to be around anybody that was infected.
Mm-hmm.
Had a cousin who lived in Houston, Texas, and he was openly gay and no qualms about it. When he recognized he was diagnosed with it and his days were numbered, he moved back to Philadelphia. Before he passed, I got word that he was in the hospital. I went to go visit him, and so several other families went to go visit him at the same time. When his situation got critical to terminal, he reached out his hand with those of us that were in the room. And I have to say this: some of my sanctified family members,
Mm.
uh, their body language was, "I'm not going near him."
Mm.
When he reached out his hand, now remember now, people were afraid to even be near them, to touch
The
them, do
touch.
whatever else. All
Ignorant.
right. He reached out his hand and I gripped his hand. I said, "Cuz, I love you." And I said, I'm just going to pray that God will give you comfort, and I hold his hand.
Mm-hmm.
That was over 30 something years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All
I
right.
have, yeah, of course you're still here. I have a little cousin. His grandmother and my mom were best friends, so I always grew up knowing them as relatives. And I remember we always knew that he was gay. And one of the signs, like back in the early '90s, is when a guy take two girls to the prom and they already a little saucy. You kind of already know without saying, right? And so we all knew he was like this. And so he I knew that he had AIDS, and I knew because remember the movie Philadelphia, and
Yes, with
remember
Tom Hanks
one
and
of the
Denzel
signs
Washington.
with right and Tom Hanks, and one of the signs was Tom Hanks had these lesions.
Lesions. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and I had gone over to visit my play auntie, and he was there. And at this time, he had lost a lot of weight. Now, this young man was like six. He was like 6'4", big dude, and to see him so skinny and frail, it was so heartbreaking. And so me and my mom walked in, and my mom knew what the deal was, and she says, how you know how people say God bless the dead? She says, you done lost a lot of weight. What's going on here? I said, Mom. And we got in that car. I laid my mom. I said, why would you do, Mom, you already knew he had AIDS. Why would you really, like, what was your end goal here? Because he was, and he just looked like, oh, Debbie James. And I was so embarrassed and upset that she would do that. We know what his problem was. We knew what happened to him. We knew, and he was very flamboyant with his. And so, he kind of slept around a lot. And he ended up getting AIDS. But I still loved on him. I still hugged him because then I was educated too. I knew that if he was sweating and I touched him, I would not catch AIDS unless I had some kind of gaping cut or
Right.
something.
Right.
But, I knew better. I knew how to protect myself and to protect him. But I didn't shun him. Like, no, like that was my baby cousin who I loved and knew when he was born, watched him grow up. And the church just does not display that type of love for certain types of
Now wait a
sin.
minute. Now you just said something that something just triggered during the height of the epidemic. I don't know if you remember, but there were several key gospel artists
Several.
that caught it and are no longer here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right now,
Yep.
let's unpack that for a moment. Um, I think what needs to take place in 2025, we have seen that the AIDS epidemic has, I believe is maybe no longer an epidemic. I think now they
Mm-hmm.
got drugs and things like that to
Yeah.
um, to resist it. And look at Magic Johnson was blessed that he had good doctors and good money. You know, he was like the healthiest HIV
I
survivor
ever
I've ever
seen in
seen.
my life.
You know, so but the point that I'm making, the church has to do a better job in terms of its culture and how we deal with all types of sinners,
Mm-hmm.
especially those from this community. When I say sinners, please understand I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but I look at what we're talking about as though that this is just people make decisions, and with decisions that you make, there are either now people think of most of the time they think of consequences as either a negative thing, but most of the time it's not just negative things, but sometimes consequences can be good.
Right.
So based upon the decision one makes, they have to suffer. They suffer consequences based
Mm-hmm.
upon their actions. People we like to get super spiritual. Saved, sanctified, and spooky. You reap what you sow.
Yeah,
Well, well,
yeah.
should we not say that about other people that sin who don't necessarily get caught or get busted,
Mm-hmm.
or their sin is not as open and as public and as obvious as others?
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as, oh, this sin is greater than that one. Sin is sin.
None. And I think what happens is the sins that people don't visibly see, but they know it's happening, they excuse. They wink. They turn a blind eye. Just like when the usher got pregnant by the drummer's still playing drums. The usher now has to be sat down.
Or let me unpack this a little bit. We will not welcome those from the LGBTQ plus I community unless they have a skill set that's going to make our ministry more marketable and more profitable.
Oh Lord.
And what we do, I have to say this, what we do, we prostitute their gift and talent for
That's
the
what you
sake
do.
of by compromising the truth for their soul.
That's exactly what the church does. They know good well that choir director, that organ player. I don't know a lot of gay drummers and bassists, but them organ players and them choir directors be saucy. But I'm just saying, but they got that choir singing, they turn a blind eye to that. They really, really do. And it's sad because it makes the church look bad. And I think a lot of churches do this whole shunning because they don't want people to think like birds of a feather flock together. Like, oh, if they feel comfortable being there, that means y'all ain't preaching sin. It might be they feel comfortable to be there, even though their preachers are feeling a little pressure and they a little tight, but they still feel the love of the church. They fully understand the church's stance, but they feel this love that is drawing them in and causing them to rethink. And so they keep coming back every Sunday. They keep coming back because something drunk. Why can't it be that instead of, oh no, they must be endorsing it. Now, here's the thing. When I was growing up, like, I had family members that were gay. I did not know until I was an adult that my one family member who was gay and their partner they had been with for years, we called them cousin. I didn't know we called them cousin because them two was in a relationship. We didn't know. I ain't know. And so as time went on, I grew up in the church, and I gotta say, like, I never really heard my pastor overtly preach about homosexuality. Like Bishop, I never heard Bishop Tart just be like, "Yeah, go to hell." I mean, I know he thought that, but like he wasn't one of those preachers that overtly talked about it or preached about it. And I remember us having this one person that we obviously knew was like that, and they would bring their friend to church with them. But then even they wouldn't come often because they couldn't take the heat and the anointing and the fire. And if it was a thing where at that time they was ready to change their ways, they probably would have came more often, but they came just enough because they knew that was their roots, that was their ground. Like that's where they grew up to. So they would come from time to time. But I don't know. I never grew up in a church where we had a bunch of that going on.
Well, see, let me go back. Let me shift gears on you. In my pastorate, I've had a lot of different experiences. I'm pastoring 32 years, and never thought that I would have to deal with a situation that was something that above and beyond my reach or my scope or my control. Had a situation, individual, part of the ministry, vibrant serving, and I'm not one to bully people or pulverize them. I preach the word, and let the word, as they say, let the word do the work. Individual came to me and said they came to grips with they came to their truth, so to speak, as people say, and in doing so, they felt like they had to leave the ministry. I said, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. And you know what the person said that really hurt me? It's not you. It's the folk upstairs. Because we were in my office. And I knew exactly what he meant when he said that. It was those some in the pews. Because oftentimes as pastors, we are not just fighting devils, we are also warring against pew pastors.
Yes, pew pastors, that part.
And go back to what I said about the culture of the church. If the culture of the church is not warm, friendly, loving from perspective of unconditional love, or of one of favoritism, that's not a comfortable place for someone who's trying to find their identity, trying to find their way. That's not a safe place for them.
And going back to what you said about the church, it's terrible that we can actually acknowledge that a lot of this came out of the church. Like a lot of young men and women. See, we don't really hear about young girls that much being violated. We hear more about the young men that have been violated in the church by the pastor or the deacon or the brother. And it's like we really, really, really should have some kind of empathy and compassion. And I remember I was reading the history of this particular organization that's very well known. We all know. I was literally reading the history. And one of the things I found out that way back, like this has been a problem in that organization for years. Like it dates back to the 40s and to, and the commentary, everything I was reading, I was like, that is insane. That a whole organization of believers are marked by that. And more now, even in 2025, we see of these people on the internet who are a part of this, and how the men especially, it's the men that's so flamboyant with these orange and red and green pinstripe, baby, just all these colors, look like Joseph's coat of many color suits and big hats, and men with their fingernails that look like mine, and they got eyelashes, and they got makeup on with full beards, and they're on the internet doing praise breaks and shouting. And I'm like, this is why the church is failing. The church is failing. Corporately speaking, we are failing because we allow other religions don't allow it. Like you go over to Africa, it's certain continents you go over, you got a hot, you better not. They will stone you, they will hang you, they will shoot you, they will kill you. Other religions, I tell you one thing, the Muslim religion ain't playing. They don't, and we always compromise. Christianity, kingdom citizens, we always compromise in everything. The Nation of Islam, you're right, Dion. They not even going to substitute and this might just a little off topic, but just to prove my point, like certain religions that don't celebrate certain holidays, like Halloween, right? They don't celebrate Halloween, and in not celebrating it, they don't even try to do a mock version of it. They don't do that. Their kids just don't go to school that day, or they go to school and they don't participate, and nobody don't violate that. But us, we don't do Halloween, but we sure do Hallelujah nights. I mean, I understand the concept of why we do it, but I'm just saying, why do we always feel like to make our children feel included that we need to do a substitute? Because at the end of the day, if we are peculiar people, we got to start teaching our children that when they're little, that you're peculiar.
There you go. Teach them at home.
Home.
Once again, I will kiss the ground that my parents walked on, because before I left my home, yep, my parents taught me self-respect and let me know I was proud, I was powerful, I was great. So if a teacher said something off, you know what my clapback was? Oh no, that's not what my dad and my mom said.
Hello. But we're not teaching our children. We're not teaching our children certain things, and we don't clap back. The church doesn't clap back. Like, people always clap back on the church, but the church, I'm liking the church like the Democrats, right? The Republicans will clap back. The Democrats will let everything happen to us, and nobody will say nothing. If I had a child in school right now and daycare, and they have what you call story time and drag, oh, my child missing story time. Yeah, my child not gonna hear Mary Had a Little Lamb with a 6'4" man in a wig big as life and all this makeup. Absolutely not. That's the day my child stay home. And I'm writing a letter to the superintendent wondering why.
Let me stop there for a moment and speak to that issue. And then I want you to ask the question you asked me last night about the invitation, if you remember. If you don't remember, I'll remind you. All right? Okay. The reason why in a lot of school districts these days occur, the reason why they occur is the fault of the parents. And I'm going to tell you why. Mm-hmm. When I served on the school board for almost 5-6 years, one of the things that I picked up is that nothing happens in a school building unless it's brought before a public meeting and committee and voted on and is presented to the public. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, and I have to say this, a lot of times, okay, let me say this. Let me speak to her statement there. Well, okay, I hear what you're saying, Sister Harrell, but I'm going to tell you where the fault lies. A lot of parents, and y'all can shoot me if you want to, but I know I'm telling the truth. A lot of parents do not attend PTO meetings.
They sure don't.
They don't attend public school board meetings.
Sure don't.
When policies and budgets and curriculums and activities are brought before the public for discussion and vote,
Mm-hmm.
So people, they hear about it on the back end because
Right.
they're not there on the front end.
Right. That's so
So
true. They don't attend. Now this is a question that I often think about, right? So what happens when your child comes home? Now I'm talking about believers, kingdom citizens, right? I'm talking about us church folks. What happens when your child comes out to you? Your child comes to you and tell you that they're gay, right? Now let's take it a step further. What happens when, say, you have this grown adult child that is gay, they're in a relationship, they got a partner, it's Christmas time. Do you invite them? Or they say, I'm about to get married. Are you going to that wedding? Now I'm going to tell y'all a little story. I have a friend of mine, apostolic, grew up apostolic, baptized in Jesus' name, running for your life, hanging off the chandelier, staying in church till 3 a.m, apostolic. That apostolic. And one day I was on Facebook and he's a pastor. And I saw that his daughter got married. I went, oh God, his daughter got married. So when I'm looking at the spouse in the tuxedo. I'm like, that look like a woman. So I was like, wait a minute. No, he did not post. I'm like, he posted. So I happened to see him at a convention like later on that year. And I was like, dude, I got to talk to you. I got questions. I need answers. I said, so congratulations to your daughter and her spouse, right? I was like, so did you get any clap back from the saints? Or did you have this discussion with Bishop? Like, I want to know what happened. He said, let me tell you something. At the end of the day, we can have all discussions we want, but that's my daughter, and I'm going to support my daughter. And I was like, was you nervous? He was like, absolutely. He said, I'm going to get, oh, this the part I didn't tell you, Mark. This the part I forgot to tell you. Not only does he support his daughter is the drummer at the church. I was like, I'm clutching my proverbial pearls at this point. I'm like, oh, is that not mustard? Is Dijon? Like, I'm really like, oh, wow, this is insane. And he was like, no. And so, it's easy for us to say, oh, they ain't come to Christmas dinner. A lot of situations, you really don't know how you will handle until that situation arrives. I'm going to be totally transparent. I don't know how I would react. I literally don't know what I would do if I had a child that came out, said they were getting married, and really wanted me to be at that wedding. Right now, today, because that's not happening, I don't know, because there's so much to unpack. That's my child. I love, if I say I hate to sin, but love the child, if I went to that baby shower, I went to that gender reveal.
Don't go there. Don't go there. Wait a minute. You went to that baby shower where the mom and dad were married?
So if you go in the baby shower,
and you went to the gender reveal where the couple was not married?
If we're doing that, I want to know, what is the difference between going to your child who's marrying the same sex? I want to know what's the difference. If we say having a baby out of wedlock's a sin, if we say same-sex relationships is sin, but yet we go to the reveal, we go to the baby shower, we go over our children's houses who have been shacking up for 10 years with the same man and got 4 kids, ain't nobody thinking about getting married, but we go over there for dinner all the time. If we can support that, why can't you support that child that has a same-sex relationship? I'm just asking a question.
you said if they're okay. Now, I guess let me unpack this, and let me speak from a different perspective. You said your child. Now, how old is the child? Are they grown and old enough to make their own decisions?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, then
Mhm.
okay, all right, all right. I'm gonna say this, and this may many people know I'm a pastor. She's a pastor also, but I'm gonna say this: you raise your children with the sense of helping them to make wise decisions as adults. That's the ultimate goal of parenting,
Mhm.
so that they can as also what the writer in Proverbs say, your children rise up and call you blessed. Blessed by way that you've taught them respect, you taught them morals, you taught them to be good citizens as youngsters. When they get grown and they make decisions, you have to understand that's the decision that they have made. You've done
Mhm.
your part. Now, um, whether you like the decision or not, whether you agree with the decision or not, whether the decision goes against your moral compass or not, that's still your child.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Both of my sons, my oldest will be 30. Let's see, this Mark was born in 88. He'll be 37 in October. Chandler just turned 32. Both of them have made decisions I don't like, but let me tell you something. They're still my boys,
Mhm.
and you will see Donkey Kong in me rise up if you do anything to hurt my boys. Now they're grown men, but those
Mhm.
those are my sons.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, but the bottom line is, we 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 may not support the decision, but we still have to love them
Yeah.
unconditionally.
Yeah.
I have to say, I can't just say love them, but I have to say we have to love them unconditionally. It's no different. I have to say this. It's no different than them deciding that they like Hennessy every other day. They like
Mhm.
they like cocaine every other day.
Mhm.
They like two or three women every other day.
Mhm.
It's a decision that they have made that goes against your moral compass or fiber. But at the end of the day, that's still your child.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
supporting, I can support you, but not necessarily condone your actions and your
Mhm.
behavior.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, I I am loving and I'm loving you because of you. I'm loving you because of who you are, not
Mhm.
necessarily because of what you do. Bishop Ferguson, being a
Hey,
Christian,
Bishop.
Bishop Ferguson, being a Christian, we should be able to love without condoning, but love does have rules and conditions. True,
Mhm.
absolutely,
Mhm. Mhm.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So.
But I'm going to go back and answer the other part of your question. But I'm not going to treat them different because they've made decisions
Mhm.
that I'm not in favor with.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right.
Mhm. Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
like I said, my sons have made decisions that I'm not cool with. But
Mhm.
they're grown men. They
Right.
got you know. They're not little boys anymore. People say, "Oh, how's little Mark?" Little Mark ain't little Mark. No
Little
chance.
Mark ain't little Mark.
He got his own family, got his business. He's a
Exactly.
he's a grown man. All
And,
right.
and we have to understand also that the decisions that our children make, it literally may be the best decision for them. Although we don't see it. When I think about you have a child with the same sex partner, and we would say that wasn't wise. Well, here's the thing. Let's look at this. They married someone that has a good job, retirement, they provided a home, they have a savings. That was wise. All decisions we make aren't unwise, but spiritually, they are.
So
Naturally,
if I hear you correctly, you'd rather them be with a gay person rather than a lazy heterosexual who ain't
I ain't
going
say
nowhere.
all that.
I'm
I
just
ain't say that now. What I'm saying, what had happened
because
was
if the option
no,
wait a minute,
I'm saying about a wise decision that that it might be wise on the natural part, but spiritually, it's not. It's not. It goes against God. So, because when homosexuals have the same relationship issues that heterosexuals have, the
Oh,
same
absolutely,
identical.
absolutely,
And so
absolutely.
they made a good decision. You'd be like, oh, okay, you married up, but you married the wrong sex.
I go back to what I said earlier on, maybe 15, 20 minutes ago. We have to treat everybody with respect, with honor and dignity.
Mhm.
Let me say this. Um, even people in the LGBTQ plus I community, we have to treat them with respect because we don't know the trauma. Some people have gone through certain levels of trauma,
Mhm.
and they've made this is their escape. This is their coping mechanism, so to speak, through the trauma. And I've said this many times. You don't know what a person has gone through just to walk through the doors of the church.
Absolutely.
They may have caught major hell during the week. Please don't give them another dose on Sunday morning.
Yeah. And Faye, I believe what you said is absolutely right. No decision made within sin is wise. Right, spiritually speaking. That's why I said, right, absolutely. That's why I
I
said,
agree.
from a natural
Point,
perspective,
right?
they did good. But in a godly perspective, it's going to be consequences or repercussions for that decision. Definitely. And so we got to do better. We just got to do better. We got to do better. My daughter had a child when she was a teenager. I was not going to make it hard for her because natural consequences will do that. You have to take care of your baby.
Wow. See, I applaud you, Mom.
Absolutely.
I applaud you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is
Absolutely.
awesome. That's awesome.
And yes, Harold, I agree. I agree with Leviticus 18:22. I agree.
So was division and sowing seeds of discord.
Exactly, and that's my point. That you're absolutely right, Harold, 100%. But a lot of times, I think what happens is we take that one sin and rise it above everything else, and where God is saying, sin is sin. It ain't no big sin, little sin. Like it ain't no big lie, little lie. Ain't no white lie. No, a lie is a lie is a lie. A sin is a sin is a sin. And I think what happens is we only apply, so, and not you, Ahel, but I thank you for bringing that scripture up.
Right.
But a lot of times we only apply certain scriptures to certain sins and park it right there and leave it.
Bishop Ferguson makes a very good point. I know he's going, and let's unpack. Let's deal with that for a second. Then we're going to go to the next point. We shouldn't compromise God's word to justify our love for our family because God doesn't. Absolutely, God loves unconditionally, but He's still true to His word. Absolutely correct.
Yes.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, we have to still speak the truth in love.
Definitely. Let's go to
I think we're gonna at some point. Stefania brings in the issue of unwed pregnancies, or I think we need to talk about that at some point later down the line.
Yeah. I think we need to talk about.
No, but here's the thing. I'm at this. A lot of times, I find in the church, people are very they put on their Pharisaic hat until the issue comes knocking on their doorstep.
Bam, that part. Yes.
We want to slam that deacon for his gay son, and then when your daughter comes home and tells you, I'm not into boys, I'm into girls. Well, all of a sudden, before you wanted to throw that, you wanted to crucify that deacon, but now you want to call a solemn assembly for your situation. What's the difference? The difference is it's come to your doorstep.
Yeah.
And we're not sensitive until it impacts us.
Yeah.
All right. Now you in our prep, we're almost through. You asked a question last night about preacher being invited. You want to hit that one?
So all right. So we need some participation in this. I want to know what you all feel. So most recently, Jamal Bryant, who is very controversial, has been for years, he preached at Bishop
Puff.
C. Allen's church most recently. Now, for those of you who don't know who Bishop O.C. Allen is, he is the bishop that is most known for being married to a man and having a first gentleman. And he's also known, he's been trending where he it's a segment of a sermon where he says, this is not a gay church, because if that was the case, if you go to any church in Atlanta, you would call it a gay church because it's gay folks in all the churches in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You know, facetiously speaking, not all.
Right.
You know what he's saying. So Jamal Bryant, and he caught some flack from that. So I want to know, what say you? Like, what do you guys think about Jamal Bryant preaching at O.C. Allen Church? Because remember when Carlton Pearson started preaching that indoctrination of that doctrine of inclusion.
Yeah.
And he caught a lot of flack. They crucified him to the day he died. So, you know, what's the difference with Jamal Bryant preaching? What do you guys think about that? So now,
let's get some more participation on this. Let's see how you all feel about that, and I'm going to give you my take. What's your take? How do you feel about Pastor Jamal Bryant speaking at Bishop O.C. Allen's church with the pastor has a partner, and the partner's called the First Gentleman? Let's get some feedback.
They are legally married.
Let's see how the believers out there feel about that.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about it?
Is he wrong? Is he wrong for having accepted the invitation to go speak at that church?
All right, y'all. Don't be scared.
I'm looking like it's like blessed quietness right about now.
Where y'all at now? Come on, y'all.
Comments aren't flying.
Yes. Where y'all go? Did the church close? Did the lights out? Last call for alcohol? Like, what happened?
Did you get the dismissal? Because I didn't.
I ain't get no benediction.
Or I'm sorry. Time out. The benediction.
I didn't get no benediction. Oh, Bishop said, did anybody get saved? I don't know, Bishop. You never know what God sent him. Oh, come on, LaCenta Faye. See, that's my sister right there. My sister, I can always depend on my sister to hit the nail on the head. Stephanie said, where the fans at? Girl. That's good, Faye. That's good. And you're right, Bishop. Like
that is the goal. But Bishop Ferguson, let me speak to Bishop Ferguson's question. That is the goal. But ultimately, when we go speak at places, many times people don't respond immediately. I remember I preached at the prison for years. We had a prison ministry, and we would go once a month we would minister to the women first, and then we would minister to the men later. And for about 5 years, I did this and made the altar call. Nobody responded. I was at a council meeting in Westchester. This young lady walks up to me. She calls me by my name, and I'm like, huh? And I didn't recognize. She said, Pastor, you don't recognize me? I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't. She said, I was that quiet young lady that used to be at the Chester County Prison that you ministered to. She said, when I got out, I went to Bishop Stonewall's church and got delivered and got saved. I'm like, oh wow. So in response to that statement, Bishop Ferguson, one plants, another waters, but God gives the increase. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we don't speak, people don't respond immediately, but at least we can plant the seed.
Right.
Let me go back to Lucinda's statement. You never know why God sent him there to speak. Someone may not have need of deliverance. I also liken that. My response to that would be this: if God were to give you that invite for that invitation, I'm thinking from this perspective. Jesus said, and you know what environment you're going into. Number one, all right. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. But Jesus said, "Other sheep have I, which are not of this fold. Them also must I bring." So I believe God gives us opportunity to fish in waters and streams that we normally don't get accustomed to, because maybe He's tired of us just going after the same species. Because one thing I know about fish, uh, fish fish respond to different lures. A bass and a catfish, you don't use the same lure to capture them,
Mm.
because one is a top feeder, one is a bottom feeder. So
Oh.
maybe Jesus said He created us to be fishers of men. Maybe we need to start fishing in other areas, in other waters, so we can reach the lost. And
That's a
also,
good analogy.
here's something else. When Peter and them fished back in the day, they used nets. So when you fish with a net, you're going to get some things you didn't even bargain for.
Crabs end up being in the nets because I had someone that used to go deep sea fishing, and they
Right.
will bring back crabs, shrimp, along with those
You will
fish.
get a variety of different species.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm using a particular line, I'm only going for one species. I go back to what I said earlier. Lord, send all the business people here. Send all the professionals here. Let all the skanks, let all the hoes, let all the drug addicts, send them over there.
Mm. Right.
That's
Right.
that's not what Jesus said when He said, I'll make you fishers of men.
Yes.
We can't be selective in what we capture. Oh, I want this one, but I'm gonna throw this one back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going back to what I said earlier about the LGBTQ plus community. We we have to change our culture in the church. We have to change our culture in the church, because if we're not careful, we will accept them and welcome them based upon whatever gifting or talent or creativity or skill set they have. But in doing so, listen to me very carefully, and St. John, get mad at me all you want to. In doing so, we are prostituting their gifts and talents.
Yeah.
And we're compromising. Go back to what Bishop said. We're compromised because we're only using them to make the ministry great, and we're not speaking the truth in love to them. That's where I have a problem.
Absolutely.
That's where I have a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really
Ooh, look at that. Look at that.
I can hear this in my spirit. The Lord say, go to places you've never been before. Absolutely. Absolutely. We keep, like you said, we keep fishing in the same pond. We keep going to the same. No. That was one of the things I encouraged my students. So I never did a final exam. I did a final project. And the only way my students will get to understand and feel the empathy of other people that were marginalized and underserved, you had to go out in the community where they were at. So what I would do is we made dinner for Thanksgiving. We didn't bring them to us. We went to them. We sat out on the curb. We talked to them. We find out, why are you out here on drugs? One girl said, because I got married, he got sober, and I'm still out here. Another girl said, where y'all from? Oh, Camden County. She said, oh, I graduated from Camden County with 3 degrees.
Whoa.
She out there on drugs.
On the street. Mm.
But my students needed to see that. It's enough for me to give you all these stories, and we talk about this in the curriculum and in the textbooks, but y'all need to go out to Kane Avenue, Broadway and Kane Avenue, and see the people that's about to get hit because they so high walking across the street. We need to go down there to Lansdowne and Broadway and see those people, those young ladies that are prostituting big time. You need to see that. You need to talk to them. You need to understand their trauma. Like you said, a lot of people trauma. Donnie McClurkin, he talks about not only was his uncle's son, his cousin.
Son, right? Yeah.
Tyler Perry talks about when he was 8 years old. He was at his friend's house. It was time for him to go home. The mom tells the friend, "You go in there and get your bath." She takes the key, puts it in her lower regions, and tells Tyler, "You come and get it if you want to get out." He's 8 years old. 8 years old. And we wonder why so many people are so jacked up. It's because of the trauma we have no idea about. And instead of trying to help them unpack it or try to understand them or try to have a conversation, we immediately judge them. We spiritually misdiagnose them. You see the young lady in church who's been violated multiple times, so she's very standoffish. Church over, she goes home. What do we say? Oh, she's standoffish. Oh, she don't like people. Oh, she thinks she's too good. No, that baby been hurt by multiple people in her last church, but this church got the word, so she listens, she goes home. But now you done misdiagnosed her and made her something else that she's not. And that's what we do. And as a church, collectively speaking, the saints, we got to stop this nonsense.
Apparently, we don't realize that and we're almost through, apparently a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community, they're on the fringe of suicide because of their being rejected by family and loved ones, people near and dear to them. And it's a shame before God. And many times, let's just say this. Many times, contributing factors are, like you said, misdiagnosis. Now, I will say this. Because I can speak from this perspective. When individuals come into the church and they don't look like the rest of us, they don't dress like the rest of us, please, for the love of God, don't try to make them look like missionary do-right or try to clone them and dress them. Let the word do the work in their lives.
The word do the work, and you be an example.
Okay, now let me say something. Being an example may mean if you're really looking at that young lady and you see she's really jacked up, okay, if you really want to be a blessing, dig into your closet. I'm sure there's some stuff that you can't wear no more because time marches on and facts and figures change over time. All right, or take that young lady shopping without making a grandstand about it. What did Jesus say in Matthew chapter 6? When you do your alms, don't do it before men to be seen. Do it on the DL. You don't have to make no big fuss about it.
No.
Be a blessing without broadcasting it. If you really want to bless somebody, you want to help somebody, you take that young man. You know, you see that young lady struggling with that young man. He needs help going to school. Take him to the barbershop. Hook him up. Give him a backpack. We need to step outside of ourselves and realize that there are a lot of hurting people, and people don't want to be in the situations that they're in.
They do not. They do not. And because of trauma, and let me just say this, with the LGBTQI plus, all of their trauma isn't necessarily sexual trauma.
No, not at all.
A lot of their trauma is from being beat. A lot of their trauma is they got put out of their home because they came out and they got kicked out. Yeah, a lot of their trauma, people always want to think that people become gay because they were touched. No, that is probably the least way of why people are gay. It ain't because somebody touched them. No, trauma. And what happens is they get this trauma. The person that showed them the love and the compassion, unfortunately, was the same sex. And they end up just going, a lot of them, not all of them, but I've seen that happen. I've heard young women and men say, you know what, I wasn't even gay, but the person that showed me the love when I went through my trauma, and they attached themselves and that love turned into something else.
Because when you think about it, and I'm not a psychologist or counselor, don't claim to be, but one thing I've learned in life, trauma places you in a very vulnerable state.
Very vulnerable states.
And when you're vulnerable, you're open.
You're very open.
And you're innocent and naive to a lot of things. If predators and prey, whatever.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. When you are vulnerable, even in the church, when people are vulnerable in the church, that's when pastors and deacons and other people pounce because they are aware of your vulnerability.
Right.
And because you got a need, and I know I need this food. I know I really need this. And then the deacon is going to drop off this bag of food because me and my kids had nothing to eat. We about to get put out, and that vulnerability is there. And that's when Satan comes in.
Deke got to use some wisdom. He can't take that bag of groceries by
himself.
He better take his wife with him. I'm gonna wrap up on this one. I'm gonna wrap up on this one real quick.
Yes.
Years ago, I was at a state meeting, and I got a call from a young lady who had just joined the church, and she says she was in dire straits. I just felt in my gut something just wasn't cool, so I got one of the mothers to go with me to the go see what was going on because she said she was in dire straits. I get to the house, I get to the door, she opens the door, and she got on Victoria's Secret. So the mother saw her. She said, "Oh, daughter." So mother went right on in, and I went to the car, and I did what I needed to do. So you have to use some wisdom and some discernment.
Victoria?
It was no longer a secret, okay?
Oh.
The secret was out.
But that was wisdom. See, that was wisdom. Because even if you would not have done something, and if she wanted to, she could have cast a dispersion. And you know how it is. Once somebody accuses you of something, and even though it comes out in the light that it didn't happen.
You didn't do it. You just got that smear over your name.
Charles who? Charles, light-skinned Charles with the Charles. The one that they said raped that girl. There you go. Oh yeah, Charles. Now you ain't remember Charles, the one that worked down at the Walmart.
But you associate that name with that scandal. And that's all you need. That's all you need is just some smoke.
Yep. So
look at Mr. Sharp right now. He was on First Take. Now he ain't on First Take. Well, yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your comments. Dion, good to see you. Honey, good to see you, babe. Thank you. Stefania, thank you for commenting. You've given us some insight to another topic that we're going to discuss. Unwed mothers. Bishop Ferguson, love you, man. Thank you for popping in. Yes. Lucinda, you are the sage for the age, Lucinda.
Yes, Lord.
Man, I'm so glad to see all of you that are giving comments tonight, and you popped in. And like I said, we wanted to do something specifically for the month of June, and we were like, what do we talk about? We said Pride Month. Nobody talks about this particular aspect in the church, so we said, yeah, well, you can't be scared about it because whether we want to talk about it, you're going to have someone or somebody's walk through the doors of your church. And Jesus said, all souls are mine, no matter what community they come from, whether they come from the alcoholic community, the drug community, whatever community they come from, we are there to minister to them, preach the gospel, but most of all, be an example. Be an example.
Is Anthony one of your members?
Yep, that's Anthony. That's my graphic artist. That's him.
All right, I thought so.
That's Brother Anthony, yep.
Yeah, I'm glad you stumbled. You stumbled in the right direction, Steph. The right direction.
Hey, thank you all so much. We'll let you know what the next one is. We both have been quite busy in our own schedules, so we'll let you know what the next. But I think we need to talk about unwed mothers and how we need to unpack that to some degree.
We can get something together, and that'll be our next topic, and we'll let you all know. So I need you all to do us a favor. Share this video on your page, please. Share it in groups. Share it. If you know anybody that you know will be blessed by this conversation, please, please share it. We would love that.
Absolutely.
Well,
Let's get the
this
word
has
out.
been amazing.
Absolutely, as always.
So we want to say thank you
Yes.
because it's commonly reported. And we love you all. And this has been your gracious host, Tony McGorder. And
Mark.
we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, be blessed. Take care
Bye.
now.